Hey there guys, this is Victor with Victor JKU. Back in the garage, and today we're going to be starting the build for my front fender flares for Project Vector. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so today we're going to be going over how I plan on building my custom front tube flares for Project Vector. This is really a project I've been looking forward to since I wrapped up the rear tube flares that I built off the Evo rock skin builder corners. And what my plan is to complement the rear end to the front. Now I'm going to be doing a few things a little bit differently. So obviously on the rear I use the Evo rock skin builder corners to be the main structure I was building my tube flare off of. Now when I'm talking the front flares though, you can see that I have the front fender panels removed. So what my plan is I want to actually build my flares directly off the inner body structure. So there's two structural tubes here, as well as the stamped sheet metal on the inner body structure here that is spot welded into the rest of these tubes as well as the rest of the body. What you would see very typically on a fender panel mounted flare is that it will just cause that to crush in. I figure I don't even want to deal with that. I'm going to build straight off the inner body structure. And I feel like this will give a much more stable mounting location for the flare to be built off of. Afterwards, I'll do some trimming of the fender panel skin to make it be able to slide on over top because I will be making this flare larger than what the existing flare opening is. But you'll see how I go about that through my process. So let's talk about the material choices that I went with for the front fender flares, a little bit different than what I did in the rear. What I'm going to be using is 3/16 inch bar stock that's 4 inches in width. That's what I'm going to be using to make the base structure that's going to be mounted to the body. Then from there, I'm going to be using 1 3/4 inch instead of the 1.5 inch by 120 wall round tubing. That's what I'm going to be using for the tube structure of the front fender flare. And I'm going to be doing something kind of similar with the way that I did it in the rear. So I'll still do the posts that come out, and I'm going to join the connecting tubes between those posts, and then I'll grind it, put on those caps, and then I'm going to cap and skin the tube flare with 1/8 inch thickness bar stock. So there are a couple small things that I have to do to the inner structure to be able to get it ready for me to start figuring out exactly the layout that I want to go with for one, the inner structure mounting panels, and then how I'm going to build the tube flares off of it. So there is this rib here, which I'm going to have to pound into the body a little bit so it's smooth. I could also cut and remove it, but I figure I'm just going to pound it straight in. And then I also have to cut off this fender flare support bracket. So this guy is going to kind of suck a little bit. There's the perimeter welds, so there's one on the upper tube and lower tube, both sides. There's one across the top, and then also there's a slot on the inside here. So I'm going to have to cut all those welds to be able to remove this, and I want to do all of that with as minimal damage to the tube underneath. Now granted, if I do cut into it a little bit, what I'll do is I'll come back to my welder, touch it up, fill in any cuts that I did into it. So I'm going to go ahead and get my angle grinder out, and I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this guy off. Alright guys, so the first step that I took in laying out the base structure is I cut out some 4-inch wide strips of cardboard, which is going to simulate the 4-inch bar stock that I plan on using. So what I did was I just started down at the bottom, basically thinking, where exactly do I want this to start? Where's my key point here to make sure that I have enough of the fender to cut out based on where the factory flare sits, because I want to make sure that when I go and I cut the skin, I remove the flange that the material bends back into so that I'm not having any of that remaining. So I want to just have the good portion of the skin still showing. So I just wanted to make sure that I started off in the right location here, and then I came up and I split the angle. That way when I butt weld the two pieces of metal together, they will have equal distance. So I figured out what the angle was and I cut those even, and then brought it up here, did the same thing. And this top piece will come up and we'll have to bend around the front because my plan is I'm going to be adding a tube in the front here that's going to come out and support the front end. So with this, I also figured out some bends I need to make down here. There are approximate locations. I won't be able to gauge exactly the degree that I need to go. I'll have to eyeball this and then figure it out, and I'll use my swag off-road brake to bend that. I can go ahead and use these 3 templates and start cutting out the material that I need. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and talk about the first piece here that I've already gone and bent up. So basically what I started off with is I used my cardboard template and I transferred all the approximate bend locations over to the steel. And then I brought over the steel piece with the lines marked on it, and I just did a quick double check based on the approximate location I want it to land at the top. Looking at it, making sure, okay, that looks like it should be right about the correct bend location. Once I felt good about that, I figured out, okay, this needs to be 40 degrees, so I threw it over on my swag off-road press brake and bent it to the 40 degrees. With that, I brought it over to basically just put it into place and check and make sure that this first bend was correct. Once I was able to verify that, I then marked the underside where the bends needed to happen to make it come down and to match it flush to the inner fender structure. And so with that, basically I knew I just needed to essentially match so that this surface and this surface are parallel. I realized after that that this body panel slightly tapers in forward. So what I decided to do was I added in a third bend, and this guy here basically coming at an angle just makes it so this front edge kisses and hugs real nice and tight to the inner fender structure. So I'm really happy with how this fits up. Everything's really tight along the backside, the bottom, and the front. Alright, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up the material for this piece along with the other two and get ready to start figuring out placements, getting holes drilled in the body, nutserts, and then we'll go ahead and start welding the 3 pieces together. Alright guys, so I went through, I cleaned up all 3 pieces of the metal, cleaned up their surfaces. I also beveled an edge between each of the 3 pieces. I'll have a nice chamfer on both sides, so I'll be able to fill the weld in, make sure that fills in good and we'll get good contact, and then that way when I come back to grind it'll be less to have to grind off later just to make it so it's a smooth finish. I also decided to cut a little bit off the bottom here so that when this guy is in place it is basically just straight across the bottom. I also added in a couple of radii as well just to clean up the look a little bit. So the next thing that I got to do is I've already kind of laid up the 3 pieces, made sure that where I have my interconnection points here laid out is correct, and they are. So we're good to go ahead and start figuring out how we're going to mount this. So I need to figure out where I need to drill holes on this piece to be able to start mounting it first, and then what I'll do is I'll work on to the next 2. But there's a dilemma that I have, is there is this cutout here, and I need to make sure that I don't try to place a screw in this location or too close to it that it's going to end up drilling into basically this rounded edge, because that'll be very difficult to do, and also the nutsert will not be able to seat properly in those locations. So what I did was I put this guy up into place where he's going to be, and then I went and I marked basically the top and the bottom of where this pocket is, and I put some extra tape down and I traced where that pocket is on this tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tape off, I'm going to put it onto this piece of metal, and that will identify where I can and cannot drill holes for mounting the flare to the inner body structure. So let's go ahead and move this guy over and start transferring over to figure out where we're going to put these drill holes. So now you can see with the tape on here, I can see where I cannot drill a hole. That, and also I do know that I have this backside that I have to be in mind as well. So what I can do now is figure out where I want to drill, because I'm thinking I'm going to put a hole up here. I'll probably put a hole or 2 down here, and I'm going to put one last one down here. Alright guys, so basically what we went through is we figured out where we could drill the holes. We drilled them out. We also then, the corresponding locations were on the body. And I drilled those out to just a little bit over 3/8 of an inch to accept the 1/4-20 nutserts. After that, then I was able to go ahead and throw the panel in, and you can see how well it fits up so far. So I'm pretty happy with this. So based on what I mentioned earlier, I just pounded it down. I think that's gonna work out just fine for this case. So then the next thing I'm gonna do is bring in this next piece, and there might need to be a bend applied to it. So we're gonna see what we end up coming up with when I start laying it into place and figure out if I need to put a bend in there, and if so, where, and I will go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and probably throw in either 2 or 3 fasteners on this leg, and then there'll be several more to throw in on the final leg. That's gonna be the horizontal parallel with the hood piece. So we've finished mounting all 3 pieces and forming them as necessary. So basically what I had to go through here is make 7 consecutive bends across the entire profile to make it so it follows the contour of the 2 tubes here, primarily focused to follow the lower tube because that's what I'm mounting off of. So basically it was a lot of small progressive bends, basically about a 2 degree, 2 degree, 5 degree, and then I kind of varied between 2 and 20 degrees to finish the wrapping around the front. So the reason why I wanted to wrap it further around the front is because I plan on having my tube flare extend up towards the front of the grill. I'm not exactly sure how much I wanted to go forward, but my plan is to basically have a post that's going to come straight forward off of this front face. But I just haven't really figured that all out yet. I have an idea of what I want to do for the tube flare basically up to about this point all the way back. So I'm just going to basically be starting from the rear, working my way forward. As I work my way forward, I'll figure out how I want to incorporate the front end. So basically where it leads me now is I have my chamfers on the 2 connecting points between the 3 pieces. It's time to go ahead and clean these guys up and go ahead and weld them together. And then once I'm done welding, I'm going to go ahead and grind them smooth, and that's probably going to wrap it up for today's video. So let's go ahead and get to welding. So we just finished up grinding down the welds that I put down. I still have some work to do on the outside corners as well as the insides just to finish off the look. But this is basically going to wrap up for today's video. So this is how I went about creating the base structure that I'm building the tube flares off of. Be sure to keep an eye out for my next video that I'm going to be releasing, which is going to cover how I'm going to go about building the tube structure off this. It's going to be very similar to the video that I did for my Evo Rockskin Builder Corner tube flare build, but this is going to be a little bit different because I'm building off the inner fender structure versus an outer body panel, and there's going to be some additional tube work that's going to be happening up on the front. It's going to make it a little bit different, a little bit more difficult than just building the straight tubes coming out of the body and then joining them. So if you enjoyed today's video, please hit the thumbs up button, give this video a like for me. Drop any questions, comments, or other feedback that you have in the comment section down below. And for those of you that are returning subscribers, really appreciate you guys. Thank you for subscribing and sticking along with me and checking out my videos. If you're not already and you are enjoying the content that I'm uploading, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. And then also guys, help me grow my channel by sharing this video on any social media platforms that you guys use. Help get my videos out there and help me grow my channel. Otherwise guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. We are Jeep JKU. We are taking on this build and the trails both direction and magnitude. Alright guys, have a good one. We'll catch you next time.